So tonight's session is really about focusing on, whoops.
Oh, sorry, can I go back?
That's okay. Just basically navigating the middle school timeframe. At our general information session, we kind of already shared this. There's lots of changes that happen in middle school. There they all are. We won't read all of them because we've already talked about it with this group the last time. But that's kind of what caused us to take a different approach this summer. We've noticed that this time frame is so difficult, especially for first-time middle school families, that really helping to set up some of our avenues to support ahead of time can help us to be a little more proactive. So tonight we're going to spend a little bit of time on, talked about the last time, school home partnerships, very important.
It's delayed a little bit, so.
Yep, no problem. So we're going to start off looking at some school counseling and get a little bit more in depth in terms of the role of a middle school counselor. It's very different from in the elementary school. It's not therapeutic, it's not a therapy session, but our school counselors at the middle school do get more involved. So we want to make sure you understand more of the role of a counselor and how that shifts, ways that your school counselors can help support you as parents and guardians, as well as your children, and then how to be a partner and kind of keep in contact as a team with that piece. A big change in the middle school is we do start to see it an uptick. It kind of does a slope up and then back down of peer conflicts as friend groups change and social skills change and things like that. So we get a big uptick of reports of bullying in the middle school, not necessarily a big uptick in actual bullying. And a lot of times it's just understanding the difference between peers having a conflict versus actual bullying. So we'll spend a little bit of time looking at that tonight. Our behavior support processes, again, very different when learners are kind of traveling around the building and they don't have the same teacher all day. How we address behavior shifts, and we want to make sure that we're able to partner with families when those sorts of things occur. And then the last piece will be some ongoing opportunities of how we can keep engaged with our parents and guardians as well as keep learners engaged. So I'll turn it over to you, Ms. Baker, and I'll click.
So I just want to talk a little bit about the role of the middle school counselor. We're here, there are really three main categories that we focus on in middle school that also carry over into high school. We look at academics, how we can support learners being successful, kind of break down those barriers, what's getting in the way, help them celebrate their successes and find opportunities to challenge them. That's part of that. Help them manage any emotions and apply interpersonal skills. This can be a time, Mr. Dustin had already mentioned, where friend groups are changing, they're trying new things, meeting new people, and that can be exciting, but that can also be overwhelming, can cause sometimes disappointment or changes, and just trying to figure out kind of where they belong and who their kind of peer group is. And also with teachers too, right? They're interacting with 8 different teachers throughout the day, so kind of managing all of that also plays into that and how they communicate directly with their teachers and the other adults around them to help advocate for themselves. And I know often when I talk about career and people think about 6th grade, it's kind of like, well, what does that look like? And really, this is just an opportunity for them to start thinking about the things they're most interested in. And we encourage them to be curious, to try new things, to identify their strengths, to identify things that they might want to work on or improve on. And over time, some of that happens through exploration with different career opportunities or taking what they learn and saying, okay, what does that look like when you're outside of school in your own personal life? So we do some of that, we engage in that in 6th grade and middle school in general. And sorry. So I think the next piece, which will hopefully catch up and come on the screen, is to talk a little bit about how we do this. And there's basically 3 different ways, and we call it Tier 1, which is universal supports, meaning every single, in this case, 6th grader gets programming from the school counseling team. And that's up here. We implement the Second Step program. That happens, they have that transition period. So the middle school counselor for 6th grade is Ashley Benz, and she'll be joining transition class. So your learner will probably see her once a week in transition class. And throughout the year, and she'll work on mindsets, like having a growth mindset. What does that mean? Talking about goals, what kind of long-term or short-term goals do they have? How we can help support that, what that looks like here at school and or at home, outside of school. We'll talk a little bit further on in the presentation about recognizing bullying and harassment, what that means, what that looks like, and understanding kind of how they can be an upstander, a person who is kind and supports other people, even if things aren't going well, how they can help that person find help or support, or how they can find help and support if they're in those situations. to help them recognize their thoughts, emotions, and decisions, and then managing relationships and social conflicts. So each of these topics have 6 to 8 lessons that over the course of the school year, Ashley will be working with the teachers during transition to facilitate and engage learners. We'll share information with families. We're really big on sending either some just general messaging to all families or sending some weekly or every other week emails about kind of what's going on when we're in class. I think you'll find that in general throughout your time here with us. That we're really good about sending lots of communication. So I apologize up front if it seems like a lot, but there's always a lot going on, and we always want to make sure you know what we're doing with your learners so that you can call us if you have questions or concerns, or you can reinforce some of that at home, or let us know if there's other ways we can support your learners here. Classroom guidance. So in addition to being in the classrooms doing second step, we oftentimes have some general themes that we focus on throughout the school year where we're pushing into the classroom, so we're going in instead of pulling kids out and teaming with the teachers. And so some of the things that we did last year, and I would say we probably will do again, is like a big lesson on digital citizenship, what that looks like for them. And I know we'll talk a little bit more about what that looks like here for us, but what that means for students. Kindness is another example where we went in and did some classroom guidance around that, some projects, some activities that were pretty successful. And then every year we choose monthly themes. It can be, for example, like healthy relationships or kindness month or some other themes that we've done throughout the year. And in those, there are a couple different components that happen for that. There's always a classroom piece, usually during mentoring, some little quick activities that the mentoring teachers can do with learners. We usually partner with outside community individuals, organizations to come in and help, and they usually do some programming during the cafeteria, lunchtime, where they're in kind of interacting with our learners, doing fun activities, either at their individual tables or as a whole group, so that's our community connection. There's also positive messaging that we put on our clocks to engage our learners throughout the day with what we're, like for kindness, lots of positive messaging there. And there's always a component that we share with families at the beginning, like this is Kindness Month is coming up, here's some of what we'll be talking about, here's some resources for home if you'd like, and then we traditionally wrap it up in either another email home or in our newsletters with pictures and kind of an overview of what we did with learners. And when we do those monthly themes, that's for learners in grades 6 through 12, so it's a whole school initiative that we do. And when our building is back up and you're able to really access it, you'll see some of the posters, some of the creative art that our learners did through Second Step, but also through some of our monthly themes that we've done with learners. So there's usually some type of hands-on piece with all of these. So this is universal programming. All 6th graders will receive that programming. And then we have what we call Tier 2 programming, and that's really like small groups. Sometimes we find that some learners may need something a little extra, a little more than just that universal programming that we're doing. So we might have, and these are just some of the examples, some learners that maybe need some support with social skills. We maybe have some learners that need some support with healthy relationships, what that means. And so we will pull them together. Usually it's during lunchtime or transition block. We don't traditionally pull learners from class. If we were doing that, we certainly would reach out and let you know. And usually those small groups can last anywhere from 4 to like 8 weeks. Just helping learners build those skills, feel more successful, then they can take those skills and transfer those into the classroom and outside of our school building. And then sometimes we find that some learners need a little extra, or maybe a group is not appropriate for them, but maybe they are feeling anxious or overwhelmed or nervous, or they're feeling like the transition maybe isn't going as smoothly as we had hoped, or maybe they're struggling with some academics. Or like some organizational skill work would help them, just different areas. And so in that case, we may do some one-on-one meetings with learners, and that can be long-term, short-term, that can be once a week for a short period of time, that can be once every other week, once a month. It really just depends on the needs of the learner. And we certainly would reach out to you to let you know that we feel like there's additional support that we could provide, get your feedback, and then set that up and do some check-ins so that you know what's going on with the learners here at school. I would also say for the Tier 2 and Tier 3, sometimes what happens is learners go home, right? So Here they seem to be holding it together, things seem to be going okay, but they get home and you're hearing other things like they're anxious, they're nervous. Having lunchtime can be a challenge for learners as they transition into 6th grade. So call us, let us know, please. If we feel like they could benefit from a group or one-on-one check-ins or some time with their school counselor or a member of the counseling team, please don't hesitate. You usually know before us that something's going on, so the sooner we can get supports in place, the better. And so if you think, and there's many more ways that we support learners, these are just some examples, so reach out. We're happy to collaborate, happy to put something in place for your learners. So we don't want to just support our learners. We know that this is a huge transition for you as parents and guardians, right, as they transition to middle school. I think we talked a little bit about last year's, they come, last week, they come home and you say, how did your day go? What did you do? Nothing, it's all fine. Not as much paperwork maybe coming home in their backpacks. And so sometimes you may be curious about what's going on for your learner. How are they doing? What are we seeing here at school? Or like I mentioned before, you might be worried about your learner. Please don't hesitate to reach out. Sometimes families will say to us, well, it feels like maybe this is just a little thing, or maybe I shouldn't worry about this, or I don't even know who to ask this question of. I don't know who can point me in the right direction. Just call the counseling center. We may not be the person that you'll end up talking to in the end, but we certainly can get you connected with the right individual. And there is no question that we can't help guide you through. If we don't have the answer, we'll find it for you. If we're not the right person, like I said, we'll redirect you. We want to make sure that if you have questions or concerns, that you get those answers, that you feel comfortable with reaching out to us, that you can feel comfortable advocating for your learner here at school, just like we'll help them become advocates for themselves. Eventually, right, we want them to be able to say, this is what I need, this is what I needed, but that can be really hard as they make that transition. So we don't want you to feel like you can't reach out to us. We can communicate with you via phone. You can send us an email. If you want a meeting with a teacher and not sure how to set that up, we can help you with that. If you are having a meeting and you want support or you want your learner to have support, invite the school counselor to be part of that meeting. We're happy to join in on that. So we really are here to help support you, to help make sure that your learner is feeling success here at school. So, and the thing is, just call the main number. You don't have to remember that Ashley Benz is the school counselor. You can just call and say, I'm a 6th grade parent, I want to talk to somebody about my child, and we'll get you to the right person to connect with. Just like if your learner walks into counseling and they need immediate support and Ashley's in the classroom, there's other individuals. There's other school counselors available. We have a school adjustment counselor that kind of floats around and makes sure that things are going well in the classroom for all learners, is in the lunchroom interacting with learners, doing some of the small group and the one-on-one, always available. We have a 504 coordinator, whether your learner has a 504 or not. Gretchen Booth-Tebow is available to help and support learners. So we just want to know, either directly from your learner or from you, that you need something from us. We also want to celebrate successes. I don't want to leave that out. We're not just here to say, oh, things aren't going well, let us jump in. Like if your learner is curious and wants to try something new and doesn't know how to connect to an after-school club or a sport or something in the community, or more time with a teacher or enrichment activities, reach out to us. We can help support that too and help your learners get connected in that way. So I guess we're kind of just a place, pick up the phone, call us, we're available. We want to partner, we want to work with you. We're excited to welcome you and your learners to our school. I think Mr. Dustin goes back to you.
So the next section is just going to be a little bit about bullying and peer conflict, neither of which is okay for us, by the way. I want to be clear that making this distinction does not mean that we're saying we accept either bullying or peer conflict, but the approach for them is different, and how we might follow up with families is a little bit different as well. So to start off with, I just wanted to highlight a little bit about the differences.
I
think my other one. There we go. So either one, this is something that a lot of people don't understand about bullying. Bullying can be a single significant incident or a pattern of incidents. Some people say, well, it's only happened one time, so it can't be bullying. That's not necessarily true. If whatever takes place is significant and disruptive to the learning process for an individual, that could be considered bullying. Again, there's other factors, but the first thing we check off is Was this a major incident or a pattern of incidents? So I'll give you an example. If somebody calls a name on the playground one time, that would not necessarily be considered bullying. But if that individual follows that learner around and keeps making those inappropriate comments, making them uncomfortable, getting in the way of their learning, that could be bullying. If that same individual on the playground was to push somebody and hurt them, that could be bullying. That's a single significant incident. So that's the thing we look at first. Was this a single major incident or a pattern of incidents? Really, that's the first thing for either one. If it's really, really minor, a name calling, we'll address it, but it probably isn't either one of these. That's unfortunately developmentally very normal in 6th and 7th grade to call somebody a name. So again, we don't accept it, we address it, but it probably isn't either of these if that's the case. The next thing we kind of look at was this targeted, meaning there's a clear perpetrator and a clear victim, and this was designed to target that victim. If that's not necessarily the case, it probably isn't bullying. A lot of times what we'll see is your child might come home and tell you, so-and-so keeps following me around and calling me names. And we'll investigate that as potential bullying. But a lot of times, the vast majority, as we investigate, talk to other people involved, what we find out is it's more of this. So-and-so is calling names, but so-and-so is calling names too, and they don't ever get along, peer conflict, okay? So if we see a very clear targeting, one person's clearly got the power to kind of attack the other, and there's a clear victim who's otherwise not doing anything except being kind of victimized, that all of this then would meet the definition of bullying. If what we see instead is name calling back and forth, nudging in the hallway back and forth, both have social groups that protect them, both of them are kind of involved, that's more of a peer conflict situation. So one thing we recommend for parents is if your child comes home and says something to you, so-and-so's calling me names, so-and-so's bullying me, just get a little bit more information. Tell me about what's going on. Okay, we're going to address this to the school counseling team. Okay, we're going to address this to administration. Ultimately, you don't have to be a sleuth. If either of these things are happening and you're not sure, just let us know, and we'll do a lot more digging. Yes?
Where does the bus come into this? So if kids are on the bus, does that fall under the bus company's jurisdiction, or is that you guys?
That's a great question. The bus and bus stops actually are considered extensions of the school.
Okay.
So if things are happening while kids are waiting at a bus stop, we definitely want to know about that and we will address it. Things on the bus, if something's going to happen, the bus is actually a wonderful place for it to happen because there's cameras. Modern camera systems on buses are sharp and we can hear everything, so the bus counts as well. So anytime that there's bus stops, school, even walking to school counts, we want to know about that so we can help for sure. So when we get a report of this, and again, we want to hear about this if it's happening. The only reason that we like to give information on distinguishing is so that you can help us kind of know where to go. But if you're not sure, just tell us what's going on and we'll investigate. When we get a report, this is what we do with that report. Oh, okay. Peer conflict is far more common. That's what we find. So every single report we get of this sort of interaction requires us to look into it. If we are told that this is more of a peer conflict, then we're going to look at it from that lens and we're going to get information and decide where to go. So the peer conflict side, we typically will start over here. We'll talk to families, talk to learners, get school counseling involved, and decide if sitting these individuals down with lots of support might help to resolve the situation. We never recommend that for bullying, by the way. That's almost never healthy to do when you're trying to get to the bottom of it. So if we think it could even be this, we won't even go here. Because putting a victim down with a perpetrator in a bullying situation is not going to work. So again, that's kind of why we get a little more information first. But peer conflict, we typically will call families, get information, start there. Can we sit these individuals down who are equally having a conflict and help them develop some skill through this process? Sometimes that's not possible or appropriate. Sometimes the families will say, we're not really comfortable with that. Sometimes the children will say, we don't want any part of that, we're not comfortable. Any of that will end that process and move us on. If it is possible, we'll do that. That typically resolves things, and we'll put a support plan in place to kind of keep an eye on things. If it's not possible, isn't appropriate, isn't going to work out, then we always do this, come up with some sort of a support plan so that the involved parties kind of know how to stay away from each other, how to have their zones kind of not overlap for a while. We'll make sure that school counseling is able to check in with them and their families, and we'll keep an eye on what's going on and keep families in the loop. Ultimately, we hope to get here at some point because it isn't really helpful or healthy for a peer conflict to go on forever. These individuals will be with each other for 7 years. So eventually we want to get them to a place of resolution, but we also know that's not always immediately possible. If the report appears to be bullying, either somebody tells us we believe this is bullying, or the facts that are presented to us, we go through that checklist and the facts as outlined would appear to be bullying, by law we are required to investigate that, full stop. So if we believe this could be bullying, we don't have the ability, nor should we, to kind of screen it out and say, well, we don't think it's bullying. So what we do in that instance is we open an investigation, we notify the families there's an investigation going on. Many parents in middle school at some point will get a letter from us and get a phone call where we say, we've got a report that we're investigating. I just want to be clear, investigating does not mean substantiated, founded, it just means we're looking into it. If the investigation is substantiated, which means that the evidence shows us more likely than not this happened, then we go this route, which is putting remedial steps. Remedial steps are like things to keep everyone safe, things to address the behavior with the perpetrator, and things like that. A support plan, and then there's consequences attached for the perpetrator every time. If it's not substantiated, that doesn't mean it's not true. It just means the evidence doesn't support this as bullying, at which point we kind of jump over here and look at, through the school counseling lens, what we can do to support. In both cases, we are going to address both individuals, keep families in the loop, look into it, provide lots of support. Again, I just want to be clear, we will always investigate any report of bullying. So if you get a report from your child, you're not sure, just let us know the facts and we'll look into it from that situation. 100% of the time we will investigate bullying. However, no matter what the outcome is, whether it's peer conflict or bullying, we will provide support for both individuals and we will try to resolve in the long term to get a situation back to where everyone can feel safe and focused on learning. There's three questions that we typically get in these situations. So I'm just going to put these out there now, so hopefully they don't come up again. They probably will, but that's okay. One question we often get when there's a situation like this, because I have two small children, my 3-year-old, she was 2-year-old this year, got scratched one time and she came home with scratches and I was so angry. 2-year-old, you can't get angry at 2-year-olds, but I get that feeling, that well up when your child is hurt, you want to know what's being done about it. And so a lot of times what we get is, I want to know what you did to so-and-so who hurt my child. By law, we can't tell you. And that isn't us trying to stonewall you or protect ourselves. I can promise you when we have substantiated bullying, we have consequences that are progressive in nature and we provide support. But we can't tell you what those consequences are. That's a legal protection called FERPA. Educational records are protected against any disclosure except to parents or guardians of the learner. So we'll talk more about that later. But I know this can be frustrating, and it's the hardest phone calls when a parent is hurting, and I've had that feeling myself. I get it, but we just can't share anything except to say substantiated or not, and if it's substantiated, we'll assure you exactly what we're doing for your child and let you know that we're dealing with it on the other end. But the second thing that sometimes often happens with children, when we address behavior, the behavior repeats. All of us have children. If I was to do a poll of everybody, including the audience watching in the future, if I asked you a time you disciplined your child and they did the behavior again, all of our hands would go up and say it's happened to us. Sometimes we'll get, well, you obviously aren't doing anything because this happened again. We have no greater power than you do to kind of redirect behavior except to progress with new types of consequences or new types of support. I promise you, we don't want your children coming to school and getting bullied. I didn't sign up to be an educator so I could watch hurt children. So we are doing what we can. We'll try new things. Tell us when it's happening again, but understand we want to partner with you, and our ability to redirect is no greater than a parent's. We're going to do our best. We're going to keep you in the loop, but we are doing something about it, and we'll keep working with you and your child. And then the third thing we sometimes get is some incident comes up, and we'll say, well, we really would like your child to work with school counseling. Well, I don't want my kid having counseling. Our school counselors are not therapists. They're not capital C counselors. They provide the exact services that Mrs. Baker said. So we will never force a child to go to a school counselor and work with them. If a parent says, I don't want my child going to school counseling, that's fine, but I want to reiterate that our school counselors are the best resource for navigating conflict. This is what they went to school for. This is what they do for a living. They have a lot more experience and time to do it than a teacher does or than I do. So any parent can make that choice. However, I want to be clear, we strongly believe that's the best way to help every child navigate these situations, and I'll tell you on the phone the same thing. That is your right, but please reconsider. These are the things that your child can benefit from.
I got a question.
Yeah, absolutely.
If something like bullying is going on, how are instances of self-defense handled? Who's around there?
So what we don't ever want to see is an escalation of a situation. So if there's a verbal type of bullying going on and a child responds by hitting the person who's verbally attacking them, that would be an issue for the person who resorted to the violent kind of outburst. Obviously, if self-defense is happening because somebody's putting hands on and they're defending themselves, we will investigate that fully and we'll address what we see based on the actions of each individual. In other words, a child who's getting pushed and they shove somebody back, that child's not going to be in trouble for that. But if that child goes out of their way to do the shoving because they're angry, we have to deal with that. We don't believe in zero tolerance, everybody involved is responsible equally, because that's just not how life works. But we discourage it, to be sure. We'd much rather have somebody come and get us, and if that was an avenue that somebody didn't take, obviously that might result in some conversation and dealing with that, but most of the time when there is a self-defense situation, we've investigated it, we're able to figure out who did what and how to address that appropriately. It's a great question. Are there other questions about this? Is a tough topic. I want to be clear, this is never easy, but I'm hoping with some knowledge up front we can start out as really good partners and navigate this. Because the worst thing in a bullying situation is when parents take sides in that situation without necessarily knowing what's going on. We're always going to take our child's side, but sometimes our children are also involved in perpetrating some of this stuff themselves. And so if we can't partner together and kind of get to the bottom of it and figure it out, sometimes it reinforces negative behaviors that we don't really want to see in our own children too. So partner with us, tell us what's going on. I know it's hard, but have trust that we're going to also look out for your children. That's our jobs to do that. And we will always navigate and get to the bottom of this with you.
How is cyberbullying handled?
Exactly the same way.
Okay.
And that's a great question too. The school is charged by law to investigate any online types of interactions, even if they happen on weekends, overnight, if it's during the school year, and it impacts the school environment for learning, the school is responsible for investigating that. So if a child on the weekend is getting viciously attacked on social media by a peer and they're coming into school and other friends are now making fun of that child because of that, the school has an obligation to investigate and deal with that. And it follows that exact same process. It's a great question. And I think Rachel's going to talk about that a little bit in her section. Any other questions? These are great questions about this stuff. Okay. There you go. You're up, Rachel.
How are we doing? Doing all right? You're like, oh my gosh.
That's a hard
So,
topic.
you know, a lot of these things dovetail together. You know what Mrs. Baker said. I mean, we work together as a team. So not only the teachers and the counselors and the nurses and the staff, you know, we're all working together. That being said, go back and think about what middle school's like. Right? Difficult. I mean, I love working with them because they learn, they do have their ups and downs, but it's just they have that energy, and you know that's what makes you know our job. I love it. I mean, I think it's really neat to see the kids navigate through those things, and it's neat being able to see that through high school when they cross the stage. So, but middle school wasn't like it when you guys were in middle school, and it certainly wasn't because I'm old. So these, I think, are some things that you're already dealing with, you're already struggling with, you're already trying to navigate, and guess what? They know more than we do. So having the conversations about technology is huge. You know, I'm sure you've already had it, the battles of, I want a cell phone, no I don't, da-da-da. The social media, like Mr. Dustin's saying, I would say that the vast majority of things that are really that big do happen with social media. And that's a challenge because it's changing ever so quickly, and the kids are one step ahead of things. And as much as you go, yep, I understand how you Snapchat, da-da-da, well, guess what? There's other things. So, you know, those are big pieces to, you know, to have conversations with families. I think if you come up with a family plan and talk about it so they know and you know, and then stick to it. I know there's going to be times where that, you know, there's going to be an argument, and it's worthy of having it, and it might be kind of bumpy. I will tell you, my 25-year-old said to me, Mom, when you took my cell phone every night, that was the best thing you could have ever done. I'm like, yeah, I know. I didn't enjoy the arguments, but you know, the technology accessibility is just huge. They have the ability to look at anything and everything, and sometimes that stuff is scary and inappropriate. So stick with expectations, talk about it with the kids. I mean, the kids really, I think so much of them are naive, but at the same time, they're getting information that you're like, how did you know about that? And I think this will kind of segue into, I think, something next.
Before you jump away from the screen, one analogy that I like to share when there's a tech issue with families is that when we were all in middle school and high school, if there were issues with a group or kids, it kind of ended at the school doors, for lack of a better term. They could call maybe and try to harass you on the house phone, but that doesn't really work, you know. Nowadays with social media, if kids are on it all the time, those issues can just continue nonstop. There's no escape from that kind of peer navigation when there's challenges at school at this point, when there's not a really good plan at home to kind of hone in on some of that social media use. I can't overemphasize the amount of things that we see that are eye-opening and disturbing, and it starts with social media almost every time. So this is recommendations. We, of course, don't control your homes. You do that. But from what we've seen, we're going to actually have a whole presentation just on technology and parent resources for that. But this is a big one, and this is a huge thing that makes our experiences so much different from what our kids are dealing with nowadays.
Yeah, and I think the other piece is it's tough. A mistake that they make now or even earlier, sometimes that stays with you, right? With the digital footprint. You know, you make a post or you do something and that can be, you know, something that unfortunately sticks with them. So it's different. I could do something wrong, not that I ever did, but it wasn't, you know, screenshot, it wasn't sent, it wasn't posted or edited. So I think conversations are just really, really important. I think that as any recommendation that we can give is to talk to your kid. And so, you know, the suspense is killing me, I know.
Several second delay every time.
I think the big piece here is you're going to see collaborate over and over and over. And that is, we want to make sure that not only we are collaborating with you guys, that the learners are collaborating with us, because they're the ones that are here. So when a student or when a learner's coming in and I might be meeting with them, the first thing I'm going to say is, tell me what's going on. I want to hear from them. You know, we need to listen. And I know that it's difficult because you're jumping to the next thing, but we really need to collaborate, because if the learner makes a mistake, then the best thing that can happen is that we recognize, you know, what is the issue? What is the issue? Is an issue, or do you totally don't think it's an issue? You know, so having that conversation is really important. Coming up with some plans. You know, what are some ideas you can do depending on the ability of the student or the comfortability with the student. You know, those are all things that you want to kind of take in consideration. And kids are different, as you know. In 5 minutes, it could change. So I think that's really important, is that you have sort of an idea, you know, you make plans with kids, and you also have to be flexible, because, you know, frontal lobe isn't fully developed till you're 25, so kids are changing. There's so much information coming in. And you know, we'll review things a lot about here's what are our expectations. You know, the biggest thing here we want people is be kind and be respectful to each other. And that's, if we are all kind, I mean, I'd probably be out of a job for discipline, but I mean, that's huge. And being kind looks different for everybody, but I think that's a key, simple word to use. So sometimes it's tough as middle school parents, because now you have to sort of like step away a little bit and go, why didn't I get a phone call? Well, there's sometimes we're not going to call you. I mean, the kids are learning, so you might not get a phone call. If things are starting to repeat and they're really, you know, having an issue in the classes or with behavior, then yeah, we're going to reach out. Teacher's going to reach out. Administration's going to reach out. And certainly if there's a big issue, you know, you'll get a phone call and an email and probably some more stuff. And vice versa, like Mr. Dustin said, if there's stuff going on, please reach out. I mean, I'd rather have a parent reach out 5,000 times rather than the parent that said, oh, I didn't want to call. Like, we want you to call. We want to partner. We're here together for 7 years, so, you know, that's the good thing about it. So, you know, kids are going to make mistakes. We all have been there, done that. So we don't expect little robots to be coming in. And we'll work with them. And that's, again, it's the nice part of the job, is kids do learn. And they'll look back when they walk across the stage and see you go, yeah, remember that time I ran down the hallway with my Superman outfit on? Yeah, I mean, that was funny, but, you know, you did disrupt the entire wing of the building. So then we kind of get into, I think this is more for the parents. This is an emotional roller coaster. right? You're sitting there going, I am with this, person that was in elementary school, now they're in this weird spot where sometimes they want to be an adult and treat me like an adult, and other times they want to regress back to 3rd grade. They might want to, Mom, give me a big hug. Okay, all right, but you're in middle school, is that weird? No, it isn't weird. The big thing is have patience. That is easier said than done. And, when you get home from work or somebody's there, taking a deep breath. I can't emphasize enough, take a deep breath. And I think it's important that, if you are reaching that point where it's really frustrating, it's okay to tag in, tag out. I think it's great to take a break yourself. Kids are going to model what we do. So, be patient. Those are some strategies that you just have to do a lot, The kids are going to, be up and down with their emotions. They've got physical changes going on. The social emotional stuff is huge. One day I'm friends with you, the next day I can't stand you, and then you liked something on Instagram, and it's like, whoa, it's a lot. So take a breath and be patient. We really, I think you've heard already, we need to work together, because it's not just an island, of parents and then learners and then staff. I appreciate it greatly for a parent to pick up the phone and call counseling or call myself and say, hey, something went on last night, they're going to be a little bit off. The teachers appreciate it, we all appreciate it. And that's helpful. Then the learner knows that they've got that support. And maybe they don't need to know that you called. That's okay too. And listen, it's sometimes hard to close your mouth and just listen, but kids want to hear that. I often will hear kids, oh, they didn't even listen to me. I'm like, okay, all right, let's process that a little bit. Number 4, time. I know this is easier said than done. Whatever kids like to do, whatever your child likes to do, spend more time doing that. I will never forget the conversation I had with my kid driving home from, I don't know, what was a basketball game, and she asked me something about something she heard that was quite alarming, and I was like, okay, she was asking me the question, I have to stay calm, all right, I'm going to answer them. So spend that time. They're going to come home and go, I didn't do anything. Just ask them questions, and I think if they know that you want to know things, that they'll do it. They might not at the moment, but they know that you can go to them, and I think that's really, really important. And just be honest with them. Empathy is huge. We talked about people being not nice to each other. Is you don't know necessarily that person had an issue at home, or their family's going through a rough time, or their pet passed away, or something like that. So we say that a lot in this building as empathy and understanding of other people. And again, I don't know, just reach out, call us, email us, and if you don't get a response back, you can certainly reach out again. Don't hesitate. So the roller coaster of emotions, you will get through it, but you don't have to do it alone. Okay? So kind of this dovetails with what Mr. Dustin was saying. There are ways, when things happen, and a lot of times parents say, well, what do I do? And with learners, I can't emphasize enough as role play, is come up with situations and say, what do you think? And they might have an idea, but role play. And you can go through, well, this could happen or this could happen, what do you think? So it's one of the best things, that helps kids sort of maybe reduce some anxiety. And they come up with great situations as well. So it puts them in the spot of kind of being in charge. As Mrs. Baker said, we want kids to be upstanders. If you see something, say something, do something. Don't just walk away. And especially, on social media. If there's stuff that's going on that you think is unsafe. Our kids are really, really good. I have to tell you that. We get a lot of kids will come in, they'll talk with staff, counselors, teachers, and they'll say, hey, this is something I saw, can I just kind of run it by you? And as parents, the same thing. It's important that, if you see something, say something, but also pick up the phone or do something. And we want kids to come talk with adults. A lot of kids will go talk with the teacher, or they'll email their counselor. That's the nice thing about, I guess, with technology, is there are so many ways to have access if you're not sure. And at the same time, is we're not going to throw you under the bus like so-and-so. You just reported to me that so-and-so said something. I'm not going to go back and say, oh, Mr. Dustin told me that you did da-da-da-da. No, I'm not going to do that. There's ways that I handle that. So And if there are issues, you know, we want to make sure that they're off limits. Like, we're not gonna stand for these things. So I think those are pieces that, you know, we'll talk about with our kids, but I think at home is really, again, some good topics to bring up about, you know, about role playing. We want our building, and we must have our building feel safe, and people need to be able to feel safe coming here, and we want to help out if there's problems going on. So that was a lot. I don't know if anybody had any questions about those pieces, because that's a lot. That's like
Just like a classroom.
yeah. You'll probably think of things afterwards, and that's fine. You can always reach out to us here. That's not a problem. Do I have enough slide? Oh. A parent often will call me and say, I don't want this on their record forever. I'm like, it's not going to be. Really what we do though is we do keep track of things because we want to see if there's patterns, if there's things that we can help with. So it doesn't, you know, it doesn't go stamped, it doesn't go to employment. So we do keep track of things, and that's obviously help us with looking at programming, looking at what maybe the learner might need for support. It helps us maybe with some changes, you know, in what the theme is for the month. We won't discuss consequences with anybody else. It's going to be the learner and the family. The counselor will know because we want to work together. It's all about working together. And we want to try to, kids are going to make mistakes. So if we recognize it and we can get them to a point where like, yeah, I could have made a better decision. We come up with a new plan and then we move forward. We're not going to like, you know, crucify them for the rest of their high school and middle school experiences. Kids are going to make mistakes. Obviously, you know, the more significant mistakes, there's more interventions that are put into place. But, you know, we do have lots of things. You can see that there's a bullet list. It's not just like detention, out of school suspension. There's a lot of things that we can do. There's lots of conversations that are going on. And that could be informal, formal. I mean, I'll walk by the hallway and I'll be like, hey, how's it going today? You know, yesterday was a little rough. Yeah, good, all right. Okay, how are we doing? Thumbs up, thumbs down. You know, there's conferences that we'll have with kids in an office potentially, and that's really for privacy. Kids in front of a peer group, there's a different feel to it, if we all know, right? There's a difference when a kid is in a classroom and they're doing stuff, and then I might have them come over, let's talk about that, and it's a whole different ballgame. So, I mean, we know that, so. And we have some other things that at lunchtime, it's a step that we will do if we have to, because we've tried these other pieces. And we'll have kids stay in for lunch, we'll process with them, explain to them, you know, what can we do differently, and then again, they're off for the rest of the day. We're not gonna hold them in. We do have after school times, and that could be with teachers or with administration. If there's really significant problems that we need to spend more time with processing and planning, you know, they could spend some time in school with us. They'll meet with counselors, administration, maybe the teacher might come down. So that's something that we can also use. Really don't want to go to that point of out of school suspension. There are times though, obviously, when we do need to have that, mainly for safety, for really, you know, significant egregious situations. But we don't just say you're gone for 5 days and then come back in. We always work together with, if there is some out of school time, always coming back in and spending some time, like, because it's tough. You're coming back in and maybe it was a pretty significant mistake. How do we plan for that? How do we help with academics? How do we help with the social emotional piece? Because we know that it's stressful. Even though they made the significant mistake, you know, we got to make sure that we can also start to repair those relationships. You know, obviously it depends on what's going on. So, I don't know, did anybody have any questions about like consequences or anything? Okay. All right. And the good thing about middle school now is you have so many more things to do. We have dances. Mrs. Lindstead is going to talk about all the things they can get involved with. And let me tell you, the more involved they are, the better things go.
So a lot of heavy topics tonight. But I want to be clear, these represent small slices of the middle school experience. Most of the time, most learners, all learners, most of the time have success. And we want to give this information to minimize those times when maybe things aren't going well and make sure we have resources to support. But I want to be clear, this building is a wonderful place to be. Our kids are great, our families are great. I don't want anyone walking away tonight thinking, oh my gosh, kids are going to be suspended and in trouble and there's bullying. We have normal stuff to deal with, that's kind of what we're sharing, but it's not the vast majority of our experience. What is what I'd like Heather Lindstedt to come up and share. The vast majority of our experience is great stuff going on in classrooms and lots of kids getting involved. So come on up, Heather.
Listen, one of the biggest scary things, and so you guys are ahead of the curve, there is no basement. So that is one of the things that the sixth graders get told, that there's a basement and it's really scary. So make sure your kids know, there is no basement. There isn't. This is it, this is the, right? Isn't this the room that's the lowest in the ground? Yeah. So here it is. So if this is, so when I first started here, kids told me that I was going to be scared of the basement. So I had to go find out. There is no basement. So just so you know. And all of that other stuff is, I can't express enough what everybody just said. We have great kids here. Truly and honestly, we have great kids, and I think I said it the other day, the older kids, the high school kids, it shouldn't be scary for our sixth graders because they really want them to have success too. I mean, there's a great community involvement in making sure. And especially though, when there's athletics or activities involved, I think Ms. Baker already just made mention, like sixth graders, are they really thinking about their career? Well, yeah, we want them to think about their career because that's kind of some of the ways that we've started different clubs, from animation to where we are right now with robotics. There's writing clubs, there's those kind of things. So these things really are a great opportunity for your sixth graders to say, are you really interested in that? Go see Ms. Lindstedt. We can create clubs and activities that helps them to be like, oh, you know, that's okay. And it's the same thing goes with sports. We want kids to try it, and if they've never played a sport in their whole lives, but they really think that they want to try it, that's why we have no cuts at the middle school. And people look at me and say, well, does that mean everybody gets a prize? No, that means you get to participate. And it allows our students to engage just like they would with their career of, is this for me? Everybody talks about it. Sorry, dads, but I was a great baseball player, and then they're like, oh, I have to try baseball. And at least they find out that, you know what, either they love it or they don't love it. And that's okay because we're providing that opportunity for them. So when we talk about clubs and sports and getting involved, those are the kind of things. Like we have people now that get involved, and I say this, but one of the reasons I think we're all in black and orange, and Mr. Dustin will say it, that we were hearing so many middle schoolers say, but we count, and that we go in that Pratt and we're playing basketball and we're doing all these things. How come our gym is only orange and black, right? And they're like, but we're representing this school, and hence why everybody's in orange and black and there's no more red and blue. So, and that comes from student voice, kids talking about those kind of things. So I know up there too was student government. I would say that if students want to really get involved, student government's wide open. They can just be there, be a part of it. Student government is fun because they get to run the dances, they get to run the pep rallies and those kind of things. And so that is a great way for students to get together. Again, you're talking about the socializing. Some of these clubs, and I want you to try to encourage, and I know we don't have a late bus, but sometimes your student is going to say that they want to be in a club that you're going to have no idea of why. And really, it's because 6 of them have decided that they really just want to hang out, and it's a reason to hang out at school and be with this group that they're starting to get to know, and they have something in common. And one of those has always been animation. It's a different thing. Dungeons and Dragons is different because, in truth, I don't even know if some of the kids even know how to play Dungeons and Dragons or Magic the Gathering. I just go in there, and even our Nintendo group, they're just in there with their friends, and it's more of a social time. And some of them, you know, with the Nintendo, they will grab the Switch and they'll be like, oh, that was great. And then it's right back to just hanging out with their friends. And it just gives them that time after school, maybe to decompress, maybe to go over some of these conflicts and stuff and be like, can you believe those kind of things? So some of our clubs and activities, you might look and be like, why is my kid doing that? I really think some of it, especially the sixth graders, it's just for the social part of it. You know, and I just want to add, again, we're not going to cut, and are we going to put people in bad situations? We're all on board. Everybody believes, just like basketball last year with middle school, we had 68 girls and boys participate in middle school basketball. And you might be like, that's too many. You know what? It worked, and the benefit of all those kids being able to play and do things, we did have an A team, we did have a B team, but for them to be able to socialize and just really start to understand. And again, like I said, we're giving them the opportunity. If they don't like it, that's fine. But again, in my experience, I'll see it. Kids that we've given opportunities, next thing I know, they're out there in the summer shooting basketballs, and they never thought that they were going to be basketball players. But you know what? Eventually, I'm going to see them as seniors, and they could become a basketball player that nobody even knew about because they were provided that opportunity. So I would encourage that, and as you guys know as parents, the thing is to encourage them, and when it's not going as well, stay with it, because you're making that commitment. And if at the end of it they don't like it, you know, those kind of things. And I have plenty of those kids that come in my office, it's not for me. Okay, what else do you want to do? And they will find something else. I will say for the sixth graders, the non-athletes, we do have lots of club sports, and that usually is run by one of our PE teachers or somebody that just can teach a lot of different sports, so that they're just kind of finding their way in what they want to do.
We also
Something.
have theater.
Huh?
Theater.
And the theater, the
Sixth
drama.
graders and all.
Yep, and they all get to be a part of it, and it's all one. And when we talk about theater and drama, there are some clubs that do include the high school kids too. And again, I've never had any problems where they felt out of place. I mean, everybody's working together because they all love drama, or they all, you know, that club or activity. So, and again, everything does get registered through Family ID, even all the clubs and activities. So there'll be a list. I don't have all the clubs and activities up yet, but on Family ID, again, and the best thing about Family ID is just to keep everybody safe, because the advisors should be able to look at Family ID, have emergency contacts kind of quick and right there. But I'm always in the building though too, so for the safety purposes of that. Okay, but familyid.com, create the account now if you've not used it before. For any of your other students, create the account. And again, as everybody has said, that account is the same for 7 years. And it's great if they're involved in sports. It will tell you when your next physical is up, when your kid needs their next physical, because that's going to pop up a month before it expires, and you can be like, ooh, we've got to have that appointment. So.
Is there, so I think our daughter's expires like 2 or 3 weeks before school, and then we have an appointment like the day before school starts.
Right.
How?
So as long as we're informed and you
Okay.
send something to the nurse or to me, if you're signing up for Family ID.
Yes.
If you're signing up through Family ID, you have to download something.
Okay.
You could write a note, because I get to check it and so doesn't the nurse. So you could download the appointment date,
Okay.
and then they can participate. And as
Okay.
long as
Perfect.
after that date that there's paperwork coming to us, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Cool.
because then you can go back in and change out the thing and download the new one.
Okay.
Or turning it in. Yep. The only thing I ask is, don't turn it into a coach, because they're not good with that. So it either goes on Family ID, or if you send it to the nurse, even with Family ID, there you can see the fax number for the nurse, so you can always fax it right to our nurses too. So it's on file. Yep. Anything else on any of that?
I did see, I started doing the Family ID. I saw a lot of the sports started participating the week of August 14th.
That's for the varsities.
So, but I think that was
So,
even for middle school.
We want you to register. I'll go back and look. It shouldn't be, but they've had
Okay.
some glitches.
Okay.
The middle school always starts the first day of school.
Okay.
And if you go back in the next little bit, in the description, it will tell you
Okay.
when the first practice and where the field's based.
Okay.
But I can tell you right now for girls soccer and boys soccer, you know they're going to be at Humiston.
Okay.
Field hockey is down on the field, what we call lower field.
Okay.
And then cross country, they always meet in the middle school CAF when they start their season, just because having them walk all the way down to the track by themselves, but, so
Okay.
that's kind of their meeting spot. But you can look in Family ID in the next couple of weeks, it'll be a description of where they're gonna meet and what time the first practice will be. Yep.
Perfect.
The thing about the middle school is, most of them will talk and they'll meet the kids in the cafeteria if they're walking down to Humiston. So, the upperclassmen will just walk up. And everybody knows where Humiston is, but no one knows where Lower Field is or to get to the, which is on our campus, but that's okay. We know about an off-campus site, but not that. Anything else? And keep it in mind, you do have to register, so if you're registering for soccer, say, but they also want to do Magic the Gathering and it works out, you still have to go back in, but then it's just a click of the other activities that they will be doing. So once you've registered with one thing, then you can just click the other activities of what they're going to do. But they can't just show up for Magic the Gathering without being registered.
Okay.
Yep. I mean, they could try it. The advisor will say, hey, I don't see you. Yeah, you're here this Friday, that's fine, but please make sure that you check it. So, anything else? I'm over time, sorry.
That's okay. So that was it for tonight. We'll open up for questions. My last slide just said thank you for being partners and reminded you that August 7th is our last forum about academics and other types of opportunities around learning. And August 9th at 5 p.m. is our 6th grade welcome barbecue. So at that event, we will send a potluck sheet out pretty soon. The school provides all the main stuff, but we always ask families to contribute a side dish or something like that. And teachers are there. It's a big event to basically meet the teachers and see the school and meet other families who also have 6th graders. So that will be August 9th. Any other questions from tonight? Okay. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. And have a great night.